As of this weekend, all 6 heroes from Heavy Hitters have now been spoiled and shown to us. So now we can start putting together maybe a picture of what the set's going to start to look like. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again. Happy Tuesday morning. Hope everything's going well for you. And man, what a weekend, because that's right, we finally got the last piece of the puzzle. So we're to Heavy Hitters with Victor Goldmane. So we now have all 6 heroes, 5 of them being new, and 1 being an old favorite returning. So what I wanted to do today was run down them. You can see I've got them over there. We're going to go through them in the order of them being released, I think. I'm pretty sure. But either way, I wanted to start with Kassai because we've talked quite a bit about her. And, you know, we don't need to spend as much time on her. And then we can go through the rest of the heroes. But before we get started, let me know below which heroes, I suppose, because it doesn't have to be just one. Which heroes are you most looking forward to out of this set? I think it's, I'm really interested to know what everyone's looking forward to. I personally think that brutes look real scary in the constructed meta, specifically probably both of them, but I think the brutes are looking real scary, absolutely real scary. So yes, first off, Kassai. Now we did do a adult Kassai video a bit ago talking about her and how she works with copper or maybe not, or golds or maybe not, and vice versa. So I got a lot of good feedback on that one. A lot of people are very high into the copper strategy, which seems it's good, right? Fair enough. I like the stuff about being able to run nourishing, but overall Kassai, if we're looking at her from what's her pre-con going to look like, how will she play in draft, I think it's going to be very interesting. I don't know how many go again cards are going to be in, like weapon go again cards will be in the set, right? That's a lot of the set is full of wager type mechanics. You have to assume there's going to be some sort of go again card, right? I mean, they could reprint hit and run. It would be a good set to do that in, I would think, because you could, do that for a weapon into a big wager or something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw maybe I'm not saying necessarily hit and run's the one that's being reprinted. Again, it would be a good one to reprint it in because it's a common arc, but something like that, I would think we're going to see, it's kind of like a 2-edged sword, no pun intended, on the card. So I would expect to see something like that so that she can get her dual swings in. We'll talk about Olympia later. He also looks like he's probably going to be dual swing. So I think that's something that we're going to need. But if you're looking at her again, it's always like playing in draft or in limited, like throwing 3 7s across the table is always a pretty good strategy, right? I mean, it's just like fundamentally good. It takes cards away or it takes health away. It seems to work. So I'll be pretty excited to see her, with all the tricks and stuff with her. I think you're going to have a hard time probably. I mean, not that you're going to be able to draft raise an army consistently anyway, but I don't know how often you're going to be doing the gold thing. You'll probably get it off maybe once a game, maybe twice a game. But remember, you need to get 2 red cards in the drink and 2 yellow cards in the drink in order to be able to do it. So that's turns in of itself, and then you can do that, and then it still has to hit. So we will see how it ends up playing out. But she's going to be, I think, one of the forefront heroes in constructed just out of the gate, I think, because people are very familiar with her. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the carryover tactics of just being, I'm not saying she's going to play the same, but a lot of people will port her into the existing strategy, and I think we'll find relative success. I'm not as high on it, but we will see, right? Because a lot of people seem very confident that it's good. So fair enough. No reason not to believe them. But all right, so let's talk Betsy here, right? So whenever an attack you control wagers, you can pay 2, and it gets +1 in overpower. That's pretty cool, right? I mean, there's a lot of cards in the set that are, the 3/7 type. Throw 2 blues out there, and you've got an 8 overpower, which functionally in limited can be pretty darn good, right? It's not quite dominate, but in many cases it's similar to dominate. And sure, there are block cards and stuff I'm sure we'll see during the set. But this is very interesting to me. Just from in limited, it just seems good, right? One's going to assume that she's got her big caber thing that she's got to swing, which implies probably coming in for 4 or something like that, right? Maybe it's like a sledge type thing where you have to pay 4 for it. I don't know, right? We don't know yet. But it's not going to be a small weapon, right? And it's going to be some sort of Guardian-esque big swing weapon, which also is very good. And so Betsy seems like she'll probably be a very solid limited choice, especially if like the weapon is really, really, really good, because it seems good. And then you have the ability to close out games, and kind of like it's not really Bravo, but it's, you know, kind of from a limited standpoint, like it kind of is, right, to a certain extent. So again, we'll see what the weapon looks like, but that's really where my head is at, is that she seems pretty good kind of out of the gate in terms of, you know, as when I look at it. I mean, again, we don't know what her specific cards and all that were except for Big Bet, which we have here. But, you know, in a vacuum, in competitive, right, in constructed, I should say, sorry, in vacuum and constructed, probably Bravo just seems better, right? Especially because he has more specs and his specs do things. But, you know, she could come out really hard. So we do have Bet Big there, right, which I think sets that works well with her with 2 blues, with her ability. It makes sense. And this is her spec, of course. So when it attacks, you're going to wager gold, might, and vigor tokens with them, right? So you can do all of them, which is pretty cool. And if you're coming in for effectively 9 overpower, that seems decent, right? Seems pretty decent to me. So I do think Betsy, like I said, I think she'll be pretty decent and limited. I don't know, you know, it's just because we have Bravo, but maybe she's got some really cool stuff, right? But again, just think about it, right? If you're comparing it to Bravo, like, sure, it doesn't have to be a 3 or more for your wager, right? It could be something, it could be a smaller attack that wagers, but by and large, I think you'd rather spend that 2 for Dominate, I guess, is where my head is at. So anyway, that's just what I'm thinking. But let me know if you agree or if you disagree, right? Maybe you're in on Betsy, maybe you're not. We'll see. All right, next is Olympia. So Olympia is where I am looking at very heavily for my hero out of this set. So Olympia Prize Fighters, the first time each of your attacks wins a wager, create a gold token. So where I'm looking at him is, first off, you see we'll talk about up the ante in a second, but on up the ante, he has 2 swords in his hand. So I'm hoping that is in fact the case. I wouldn't actually hate it if he was like some sort of single swing warrior. Wouldn't hate it at all. But it does look like he's got 2 swords in his hands. So we'll see, right? And remember, the Cintauri Sabers are in the set. So he'll have access to those at least, right? In limited, I'm saying. And in constructed. Okay. So this is very interesting. He looks to me, again, we have not seen the set, right? But he looks to me to almost play kind of like a Guardian, like more Guardian-esque, in that it looks like he'll have weapons and want to throw big attacks. So I think that's an interesting take on a warrior, right? We've had Boltyn, who very clearly plays weapons and attack actions, right? So that's not new space. But if he's like more of like a Guardian type warrior, I know they're very, I mean, they are honestly kind of similar in many ways anyway. But I just find it very interesting, right, to see how that works. But where the eyes will be on him from constructed standpoint is what he does with the gold. So does he have an ultimate? You know what I'm saying? Like, what does he use the gold for other than just gold? But you have to assume he's going to have something that he can spend gold on for an ultimate or something, or maybe not an ultimate, but a big attack or something like that, right? So that's really going to be where my focus is, you know, what does he have in terms of that? All right, so Up the Ante is super cool. I really like this. Multi-mode cards tend to be very good. This one's a blue block 3 anyway. Choose X plus 1. So attack wagers agility, gold, or vigor. Each one of those is its bullet. Or this attack gets plus Y, where Y is the number of times it is wagered, right? So you could throw a 3 at it, pump it to 2, right? or it's X plus 1. So you can throw a 3 at it and make it 4, excuse me. Okay. But this is, I just like it. I mean, I don't think it's like a game breaking card or anything. I think it's very neat. It is an attack reaction, which is pretty cool, right? So like there's not a lot of blue attack reactions that could potentially come in for 4, right? Sorry, 3, excuse me, 3, but it would cost you 3, right? I mean, actually you do have overpower, so fair enough, actually. Actually, yeah, that's a really good point. But you do get the wager and then the gold. But again, what's he using the gold for? So I think that's where eyes are going to be. When I look at him, again, if he has like a single swing weapon or something like that, I think it might put him in a better position for like limited play. But we'll see. I think he's going to be very interesting in Constructed. I don't know where he'll stand in. I mean, again, they do a pretty good job balancing all the heroes. He'll probably just be like fundamentally good. But again, unless he has something he can do with the gold, I don't see him being reliably strong. Let's just put it that way. Right, next, we'll go through the 2 brutes next. Kayo, armed and dangerous. So no spec that we've seen yet. I went ahead and put Bonebreaker Bellow on here because I think Beat Chest is absolutely freaking phenomenal, right? So the funny thing about Kayo, armed and dangerous, is that right, with him only having 1 weapon zone, he can't run like Meat Axe, right? And I think that's the real primary reason they probably did him this way, is because Meat Axe with him, I think, would be pretty gross. Actually, I'm pretty sure it would be pretty gross. So that's really interesting, kind of like a design checkpoint there. I don't think it's just thematic. I think there is a design checkpoint there, and then they probably designed into it. So attack action cards you own get +1 while they are in any zone other than the combat chain. The first time you discard a card with 6 or more during each of your action phases, create a might token. And keep in mind that effectively means it's a 5. Now, I will say a disclaimer out there. I am well aware that if you let's look at Beat Chest. I'm skipping ahead, right? If you look at Beat Chest as additional cosplay, this discard a card with 6 or more. Okay. Now, I am well aware that if you discard a 5 with KO, that it will count for Beat Chest. That is how everyone's very positive on that. There's precedent for that on other cards. Okay. I don't quite get it. And this is my lack of knowledge as just a lowly level 1. I don't understand. So if you cannot Nimbleism a 3-cost card, even if you've reduced it, right? So I don't really understand how you can't Nimbleism a reduced 3-cost card, but Beat Chest works because Beat Chest is as an additional cost. So I still don't quite get that. Again, I accept that it works, but I just don't get it. And, you can explain to me below why. Again, I know the precedent's been set, so I'm not arguing with it. I want to be clear, no one's arguing with it. I just don't get the distinction between the two. Okay. Now, your next brute attack this turn gets +3 and +5. So we already actually had a whole video on how I think Beat Chest is amazing. The fact that it's a targeted discard and the fact that it stacks is pretty gross. And then you look at that and the fact that KO can play predominantly more blues, letting him basically stack these, right? Do multiples of them, right? So think about it. Off of a blue, you could Bonebreaker. This is a kind of a dream play, right? But you could Bonebreaker Bellow twice off of one discard, one targeted discard, and then go Bonebreaker Claw. That would come in for 13 off of, I mean, again, it's your whole hand. Fair enough. But that's pretty good. Now, do keep in mind he doesn't get the intimidates and stuff that we're used to, right? So that's a thing. But Kayo seems really cool. Very cool. So I think he's going to be, especially because of the flexibility he brings you in limited, of not needing 6s, but only needing 5s. I think he's going to be very strong. I think he has the potential to be very strong. Let's say that in limited. I think he has potential to be very strong, period. I think he's very cool. I've got to be honest. I've never been a brute player. and I'm pretty like close to jumping on the Brute train here, not just because of him, but because of Rhinar too. Like they just look really freaking strong right now. So we'll see how, again, I think Kayo probably, of the two, I think Kayo's probably better positioned in limited because of the reason I said. That said, Intimidate can be very strong in basically any situation, but also in limited. All right, so let's go ahead on to Rhinar Reckless Rampage. I've got the new art there, and I am updating all the thumbs and stuff to have or going forward anyway, to have the new art on there. So he's got the same ability that we're used to, but let's talk about Show Mercy or Show No Mercy. This card is stupid good, right? So when this card attacks a hero, intimidate them. Okay, so it's just a 3 that you can pay by itself. I said pay by itself. Play by itself. Obviously, you need a 3. But my point is you don't need a discard from hand, right? So, you think like Alpha Rampage, something, right, in comparison. Right, now, what's very cool about this card is if the defending hero has no cards in hand, this gets +3, right? So that is not a when you play. That is an active effect, right? So if this card just straight pushes damage, right? Because you're going to intimidate them. So they have 3 cards in hand, right? Because that's how math works, okay? And that's assuming you haven't done anything else, okay? 3 cards in hand. If they block 2, full block, fine, right? If they block 3 because you've pumped this somehow, this gets another 3. If you've pumped it, otherwise they wouldn't, right? But this card is like, because there becomes a point at which if you can get 2 cards out of their hand, there becomes a point at which they're disincentivized to block because they basically throw an empty card at it, right? So it just pushes, right? Again, I'm not talking about maximizing the value. I'm not talking about maximizing the number this hits for. I'm talking about just straight up, this card just pushes damage in many situations, right? And if you can, like, barraging beatdown into this is a 2 intimidate that if they block 2 cards to turn off barraging, this gets an extra 3. Like, this card's awesome. This card's scary, actually. I mean, if it depends on which side of the table you're setting, but this card is stupid good. Now, one's going to assume Rhinar's going to... I don't know. I was going to say we can assume he'll get Romping Club, but like he's in a completely different zone. He might not have Romping Club, right? He might be on Claw, might be on Dual Claws. I don't know if he'll be able to use them or whatnot. Fair enough. So I don't know how he'll play in limited. Again, my statement about Kayo, to me, out of the gate, Kayo seems probably better positioned, but Rhinar looks like he's going to be crazy good in constructed. Beat Chest looked really good with Rhinar. Again, with that targeted discard thing. Seems absolutely freaking phenomenal. So our Brute players should be very excited. I think Brute's going to be super strong. All right, last up is Victor Goldmane, High and Mighty. The first time each turn you create a gold token from an effect you control, draw a card. The first time each turn you would fail to win a clash. Instead, you may destroy a gold you control, and if you do, put one of the revealed cards on the bottom and then clash again, right? So you get to retry for the cost of a gold, right? Keep wagering. Right, and then we have Golden Sun, Victor Spec. As an additional cost to play this, destroy a gold. If you do, this gets +3 in overpower. And when you win a clash revealing this, create a gold token. That's pretty neat. That's really pretty neat. Right, so you're definitely packing 3 of these if you're playing Victor. I mean, 4 for 7 is not that, like, on paper, a 4 for 7 is not good, but this thing's potentially 10 overpower, right? Seems pretty good. So this one seems really strong. I'll go ahead and put up the millstone as all we've seen so far. I'm not convinced that this is Victor's weapon, right? And we may have the data that I haven't seen that says it's not, right? But I assume it's not. The millstone is very interesting. I'm not totally sold on how good it is because, like, even if you're running a deck with a lot of high cards, you could still, like, just lose clashes and then you go from 4 to 3. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not sold on that whole thing, but having a clash hero is very interesting. Now, if we port that over to Heavy Hitters Limited, that doesn't seem very good to me, because everybody's going to be playing right? It's not like warriors are going, maybe in draft he becomes a little better, right? It's completely fair. But in sealed, where folks are playing like a bunch of big 3/7s or whatever because they got them and they need the spot in their deck, and you're not able to carefully curate your deck, I think that the clash thing is risky. Let's just put it that way, right? And if the hammer you're with is like the millstone or something like that, I think it's going to be a long day when you're, I mean, and to be fair, they're one-handed, so you can actually play two of them. So it gives you, a couple misses. But I still think that ends up being a longer day, I think, for you. So not super sold on that. The rest of it, I mean, he's just a guardian, so he can still do guardian things. And I think there's every reason to be excited about him in constructed. I don't know. Again, is he better than Bravo? Probably not. But we'll have to see what all cards are out there to help him clash and what that support is, right? So if you look at each one of these heroes over here, by and large, they each have some sort of support for, well, half of them have some sort of support for what we're looking at in the set, right? Wagering, clashing, right? Makes sense. Actually, 3 of them do. Half of them do, right? So that's pretty neat. And man, beat chest is super scary. So anyway, that's the hero rundown as I see. I was trying to kind of like, I'm just brain dumping here, right? Obviously, there's no script and stuff, just brain dumping. But the ones, again, it's because I'm like, what am I going to play opening weekend, all that type of stuff. And again, we have yet to go through spoiler season, right? And that's the whole fun of it. But talking about this and putting ourselves in the right headspace before we do that, I think is fun. That's why we're doing it first off. But I think there's value in that. So anyway, like I said, let me know below who you're excited about. And remember, the answer can be different between opening weekend and later. Who are you looking to rep? Anyway, that'll do it for today. But again, let me know below. I really appreciate you folks. Nothing else. Go Commando.